Well, this story requires you to get out your Bibles. Now, do you know what a Bible is? Yes, it's a very big book full of many stories,
I'll just bring up my app.
pages, and maps. This story is a Bible story about Bible characters found in the Bible. So, anyway, can someone go to Matthew 28:19 for me?
Matthew, what?
28.
Hold on, man. I think I just read this today.
See, this is for you.
Oh my goodness. 28:19. I totally marked that today.
Really?
Yes.
28:19 through 20.
Yeah. Well, I marked 18, 19, and 20, but cool.
Okay. Can someone please read that
Matthew 28:19
through 20?
Oh, okay. Wow. Cool.
Yes, do my job for me.
That's right.
Makes no sense to me.
Chapter 1.
Wait, what version are you doing?
The first one.
What version, Isaac?
First one.
He doesn't know.
The
Isaac.
New King James.
Oh, no, King James, what do you got?
The new King
It's
Isaac.
so funny. Everyone's liking my comment. Thank you, everyone.
We're supposed to be reading.
28:19. Okay, I have 28:19. I don't have 28:19 through 20.
We are 23:19.
Read full chapter. Oh, that'll do it. Read full chapter. You mean high school homework?
Oh wait, you said New King.
What?
Not New King. What did you say?
New King. That's right. Is that what we said?
And we spent 1 minute trying to find a stupid Bible verse.
Oh, it closed out on me because I switched it to King James version.
It doesn't like it. It doesn't like King James.
Me either. I like Common English.
Okay, I have the King James version.
Okay.
No, he said New King James.
Blind vision.
I,
have New King James.
Alright, Emma, read it.
Oh, you wanted someone to read it?
19.
yes, that's what I was saying. Thank you.
I thought you were waiting for us this whole time.
Yes, I was.
Okay. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
All right. And can someone please go to Mark 16 and read verses 15 through 18?
No.
I'll do it.
Yes.
I'll
Politely
do it.
decline.
15 through 18.
Mark, what is it?
Actually,
Mark 16.
Oh, 16. I messed up. Hold on for a second.
I have it.
Wait, what?
What did you,
16 through 18?
Mark 16 verses 15 through 18.
You say like I'm gonna invite you to
No. I ask it like I could do it.
Can I read it in Common English?
Sure.
Okay. He said to them, "Go into the."
Oh my goodness.
He
I
said,
have it.
What's up?
Go to them, go into the whole world and proclaim the good news to every creature. Whoever believes this is baptized will be saved, but whoever doesn't believe will be condemned.
That's rude.
So, what do these all have in common? What is the message here?
And
Baptizing
God.
and people and words in the Bible, and Jesus died for us.
The gospel.
Getting baptized.
Going into the world.
No, this is the Great Commission.
Ooh, the Great Commission.
Yes, it's essentially is the essential job that we as Christians are called to do. And if there's actually one word in both of those versions that I think each of us really need to get in our heads, it's the word go. Now, would someone please get their phones and Google the word go for me? Find the common English definition.
Green light.
Okay.
I don't know.
I want it.
I got it. Me. Move from one place or point to another. Travel.
And he said to what?
Travel.
Go unto all the world and preach the gospel.
Good.
Now, I have some bad news in that today many of us have grown comfortable with where we are, and so we aren't necessarily going throughout all the world and preaching the gospel. Many Christians today have a very, I call it the 21st century American Great Commission, to where we are called to go to church, go eat, go home, go to sleep, and then tomorrow we wake up and we go to work.
Yeah.
And basically no room in that for going and preaching the gospel. So in that, I can feel that some churches are getting mundane, and I have to say this now. I am not talking to anyone particular here.
He's calling us out.
Talking to me?
I have a friend who went to Carrie.
He's going for the throat! He's fighting everyone!
He told Carrie that it was directly.
No, where's Grant? I'm gonna.
He's calling him Grant! Yeah!
Grant, you can't hear.
That was so good.
Grant and Isaac were fighting. Yeah, you would know.
If you had the, if you didn't have a feeling.
No, I don't really care that much.
It was good entertainment.
What about that time?
Rude.
Carrie, what about that time Jared got kicked out of the group chat?
Who?
What would you have done if you'd missed that?
Oh, Derek. Oh, they said Jarek. I was like, what? Who is that?
Who's Jared?
He's your alter ego.
I'd like to meet him one day.
I thought that was super funny.
Anyway, that's what we said. Yeah.
And so if you know anything about Christianity should not be mundane. It should not be a ritual. The church should not be a noun. It ought to be a verb. Because who is the church? We are. Come on.
Whoa!
Point
I
to
wanted
yourself.
to say we
Point
are,
to
but I
your.
felt that
Point
was
to
wrong.
yourself. Who is the church?
I
We are.
church.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's me.
and I feel
Only I can
that
respond.
because of this is one of the reasons why the Christian population has kind of gone down. If you noticed throughout the populations by going from, let's say, the Greatest Generation from 1925 to 1945 on to here in the Millennial Generation, the Christianity population has kind of gone down. And when it's said to go unto the world and preach the gospel, many translations, including the Greek translations of like the world and such, are ethnic groups. And there was a study I found that there were at least 5,000 ethnic groups, several million people who have not heard the gospel. So we have a well out there of people who haven't heard the gospel. And so this is pretty disturbing in a way, that we as the church ought to be doing our jobs. Let the silence linger. And again, I'll just restate, the church shouldn't be comfortable. That we should actually be going out onto the highways and byways and actually telling the good word. And here's a scenario for you. Let's say that one Sunday we're coming to the bridge, okay? And there's Pastor Orlando. He's at the front and he's putting up a sign. We say, "Hi, Pastor Orlando." He's like, "Oh, hi there, hi." And we're like, "Hey, what are you doing? Aren't you going to preach a good word?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I am. Just a second, I'm putting up the sign, and the church is closed today." And he says, "Oh yeah, since we're the church, we're going to go out and we're going to preach the gospel today. Yeah, we're going to go out throughout Tulsa, and some of us are going to be going out to Bixby and other towns, and we're going to be preaching the gospel to everyone there. How does that sound?" Now, some people I kind of know would simply go, "Well, what's for lunch today?" I know that in that situation, I too would be very, very uncomfortable with actually following through on that.
Oh, yeah.
But it's what we're called to do each and every day. And I think part of this has to do with ourselves. It says in 1 Corinthians 11:28 that we should examine ourselves. See, because when we read the gospel, what are we supposed to do? Well, hang on, let me rephrase that. When being Christians, we should be Christ-like. And the gospel in a way is a mirror. We see ourselves. We see ourselves for what we can become, for who we are, not only what we should fix, but also who we are as God's children, and we see the good news that we have, and we should be proud of it. Being children of God and being Christians, it should be our duty to preach the Gospels.
All of them. Gospels?
All, yes, of course. Yes, including the Old Testament. Yes, we're going to be sacrificing goats. Oh, yeah, we can forget about it. Anyway. And one other question is, how? And another question I want to pose to you. Do you know how to lead others to Christ? My dad was actually recently talking to an elder at a church. Not like a leader, but
An elder.
yeah. And he was talking with him. This was back when I lived in Texas, where my dad, he was starting a discipleship group, because what is it also saying in the Great Commission? We should go and make disciples. And so he was talking with this elder, and he was like, "Hey, what's this about?" And my dad said, well, we were going to be learning discipleship, the basics and such, the fundamentals. And the man replied that he had been in church for 30 years, and no one had taught him how to lead others to Christ. Been in church for 30 years. When are we going to do our jobs? It's not just the preacher who should be going out and making disciples of all the nations, all the ethnic groups, everyday people. It's also our duty. And to just do nothing about it, it's simply wrong. Again, let the silence linger. And again, I'm not calling anyone out. Just saying. And another question. Another question. When we read the Word, not only should we study the Word, we should have the Word in us. Because okay, the Bible, I mean, it's great for reading, but we should have it in us. Here's another question. How many Bible verses do you know? From the top of your head, how many Bible verses? I mean, let's see, there's Jesus wept. Simple stuff. I mean, 5, 10, 20, 30.
Did you want like an answer or like?
No, I'm not asking anyone for answers on this one. Just keep it to yourself, because
What comes after 3?
and this also brings to mind another question that I think all of us should ask ourselves. And am I doing the best that I can do? Am I actually following the Great Commission? Because again, we have a great word, and we should be going out, and we should go loud and proud. Another question. Just seeing yourself as you are today, if you were the only person on earth who knew the gospel, would it spread or would it die with you? Because each of us have gifts that God has given us. Each of us has a testimony. Each of you has a light that you can shine throughout the world and spread the gospel. And just like you shouldn't place a lamp under a bed, you shouldn't simply cover up your testimony or your gifts.
Well, what if you're trying to start a fire? Then can you put a lamp under your bed?
If you want the bed to burn. Either way, it'll spread.
Most of the time, that's time charging. It's comfortable for me.
Squishy Jonathan, it's okay.
And if we actually believe in the Bible and what it says, we should be spreading it at any cost, even if it's our own lives. Because here's the situation. If you, like, let's say that you are a salesman and you have a product that you know is going to revolutionize the world, what would you do? You would go from house to house and try and get it into as many homes, into many as American and families around the world as possible. This should count for the gospel and the good word as well. So I just want to end with this question. Just, again, something for you to take home, for you to study. If you have this word, what will you do with it? If anyone wants to take the ropes, I'm open.
I will say that it's a challenging thought all the way through. I mean, everything you shared is something that we as Christians should all ask ourselves, all deal with. Like, am I doing my part? Am I doing, like, God has done so much for all of us. Am I doing what He's called me to do in response? And that's a question we all have to answer for ourselves. But ultimately, it's not a guilt thing. God doesn't operate in guilt. He is happy with whoever you are, but the love He gives us, it encourages us to love one another and to share with one another what God has shared with us. And so for me, if I don't talk about God to anyone for a month, I don't feel guilty necessarily, but I feel like, man, I really want to share what I've got inside of me.
Yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, I think that's a powerful question, powerful series of questions.
Yeah, and also has to do with also simply doing what God says. And another question: what has God told you recently, and did you follow through with it? Again, take the reference.
I have a thing. What about people who aren't necessarily afraid of sharing because, like, maybe they'll be judged, or they're afraid of, like, the strange looks, but they're afraid that they'll just push people away with it. Like, what would be a response? What would be a counter for that?
I heard someone say once that, like, if they're not a Christian, then you can't push them farther away. Like, if they're already separated from God, they're not going to get any more separated.
You know, Pastor has an interesting stance on this. And it's something in my life and in everyone here, I would hope to see it this way. Sharing the gospel, I mean, if you're reading through the gospel, what is the gospel? What is Jesus sharing with the world? He's sharing the love of God. He's sharing the love of Christ, like that He would lay down His life for you. And so you ask this question: what do you do if they're resistant? You love them. I mean, that's the gospel. I mean, you can lead someone to Jesus and think that's the gospel, but really, the gospel is, by its definition, designed to go alongside someone and build a relationship and show them the way that God calls us to live. It's not meant to be like, hey, you're saved now, read your Bible. No, it's like, hey, we're in this together. I'm by you, I'm with you, I'm for you. Let's live this life together. And so there's no like, oh, you're resistant, okay, I don't want to see you anymore. No, it's you're resistant, okay, I still love you. Let's hang out. Let's build a relationship. And whatever happens from here, just know that I love you and know that I'm for you and I'm walking with you on this. And that's what I mean.
Spread the word by your actions, not necessarily just by your words.
So much more. I mean, it's been said since you were babies, actions speak louder than words. Anything you say to them won't make any difference if you're not in their lives. So that has to come first.